Hello, everybody, and welcome in to another episode of Speaking Steagles, the premier Pennsylvania pro football podcast. I'm Nick Vete. He's Ricardo Martinez-Paz. For the next hour or so, we will be breaking down the putrid games that were put on display by the Philadelphia Eagles and the Pittsburgh Steelers in Week 13. Before we do that, Ricardo, first I ask you, I don't know what the answer to this is going to be, but how you doing today?
I honestly have no idea. I feel humbled after yesterday, but oh man, both our teams just there's really no other way to put it other than just playing absolutely atrocious football. I mean, just it was bad, man. I don't know. How are you doing? I'm assuming you're feeling similar.
Dude, it was bad. I mean, this is the thing as sports fans, it's because it's like we've all got different things going on in life. Like, things are going good for me right now. I'm still at school. You got your job going. Like, we're good. But when we let ourselves get so emotionally invested in these teams that we watch week in and week out, like, I'm not going to lie. When I had to go to work, like, when the second weather delay hit in that Pittsburgh game yesterday, I really was not feeling it. Like, and I got to work. And, I mean, you could ask some of my coworkers. I was not a happy camper for the first, hour and a half I was there. So it definitely takes a little bit of a toll, like to go through this because of, kind of the expectations and obviously the frustration that goes with it too. And then you start to let your mind, think about the rest of the season and the implications of 1 week. So, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, man, I'm doing fantastic. But when it comes to just my fandom with this team and analyzing them and following them week in and week out, this is the toughest loss of the season and definitely the toughest episode to do, no doubt.
Yeah, this is when's the last time that both teams, well, I mean, I don't know, did the Steelers win the time the Jets won? Or sorry, that
Yes.
the Steelers won?
Yes,
Or,
I believe they. Yeah, that was right before the bye for the the Eagles, and I think they beat the Rams that week.
So it was the first time where both our teams lose.
We were both, and I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna lie too. The thing that kind of snapped me out of my funk at work with the Steelers losing was, all right, well, at least I can kind of root for the Eagles now, because I have become not to the same extent I'm a Steelers fan, but I root for the Eagles to win just because I follow them so closely. So I was like, all right, and then they get out to the 6-0 lead, and I'm getting kind of excited, and then from there, it's just, kind of a big letdown the rest of the way. And I listened to a coworker of mine who was like, oh, Nick, hop on the Eagles right now when they were up 6-0, because I could still get them at like a +2.5 spread. And I hopped on them. And then from there, it was all downhill. So that was rough. But while we're talking about the Eagles, let's jump in and let's start with the Eagles, because, obviously this was a bigger game, given the fact that many people kind of touted it as a potential NFC conference final preview. The two best teams in the conference record-wise going up against it. And let down for the Eagles.
Yeah. Coming into this game, I kind of was already almost like preparing for a loss, which I don't know if that made it better necessarily, like how I feel right now, not as bad. Because I predicted like 24-20 49ers last week. And, I just felt like, like top to bottom, the Niners were the better team. And, coming off, 3 extra days of rest it's not like the be all. I mean, it kind of had some influence yesterday. You could kind of tell that they were playing with a bit more juice, way more physical throughout the entire game.
Just to jump in on that one point, I feel like that was something we didn't even really talk about when we were previewing this game. But the Eagles, this was something like their third game in like a very abbreviated stretch of schedule. Whereas the Niners weren't were they the Thursday night football game last week? I thought that was the
yeah, they were, because it was Thanksgiving the week before.
You're right. So they had the extended rest from being off for Thanksgiving, which was something we didn't even really talk about, and definitely played a factor, like you were touching on.
Yeah, but like it was so interesting how it played out, because the Eagles, like you said, started off well. They had 2 very long drives.
You had to be feeling great after that first drive. I mean, they got the ball to A.J. Brown. They drove right down the field. They were in the red zone. They couldn't punch it in, but they still got 3 on the board.
Yeah, and I was like, all right, well, this is way more promising than the last two starts where, we just couldn't put anything together on offense. So, and then they had the next drive, and again, they drove down the field. I was like, all right, if we can keep this up, we can sustain, like these long drives and keep the offense off the field. I think we can win this game. But I mean, kicking two field goals in the red zone certainly wasn't going to cut it against this Niners team. And there was this streak of the graphic that was put up. It was like 12 straight red zone trips ended in a touchdown. I mean, that streak was snapped. But after those two drives, I mean, and mind you, the Niners had negative 6 yards of offense in the first quarter, which was the worst under Kyle Shanahan, I believe. So it looked like things were going in the Eagles' favor, and then that drive in the second quarter where the Niners scored to take the lead on a Brandon Ayuk touchdown. I mean, they got into rhythm there. That was the key. Like the first two drives defensively, the Eagles did a fantastic job making it third and long, and on both occasions making them 3-and-outs. And then it just went downhill from there. And then it was just the run game got going. That was probably the biggest factor, just how physical the offensive line was at the line of scrimmage. And it just, took a toll on the Eagles overall throughout the game. It was just, there were some missed tackles here and there. Like there were a few that, Christian McCaffrey probably should have lost yards or, probably should have been stopped at the line of scrimmage. And instead he broke away. And again, I don't want to put too much into the fact that maybe it's because they're a bit tired from last week because of all the snaps they played. It's like 97 snaps against the Bills in OT. So, but still, they didn't make the tackles they had to, and just they had no answers for, all the motion, and that's the one thing that Niners are really good at is just like stretching you horizontally, vertically. It's like they make you play every single, it seems like blade of grass on the field, with all the quickness, explosiveness they have on offense, and the other part of it really was just the pass rush couldn't really get anything going. They had a few pressures early on. They got a couple sacks, but it just was it was just Brock Purdy and rhythm. Kyle Shanahan, I mean, credit to him for really, I guess, out coaching and calling a really good game against Sean Desai's defense. So that
I think that's kind of my biggest takeaway on that side of the ball is just the fact that it felt from, that Brandon Ayuk touchdown in the second quarter that you talked about where they got the lead. From that drive on, it just felt like Kyle Shanahan kind of just had the upper edge when it came to just, out coaching Sean Desai and his defense. And Brock Purdy, didn't make any costly mistakes. I think he ended up finishing with over 400 yards through the air in this game, which is crazy. And Deebo Samuel had a huge game. Brandon Ayuk had a good game. And then you talked about what McCaffrey had on the ground. I mean, the Eagles defense had no response for it after that first quarter.
6 straight drives, they scored touchdowns. And I mean, that's obviously, not going to cut it in the NFL, but it was just, I mean, with all the weapons they had, it just seemed like, whatever Sean Desai tried to counter with, Kyle Shanahan had something else to, sort of counter that counter, which was, I mean, like I said, just out coaching, out play, out scheming, and great execution on the Niners front. And so it just, they were more physical overall from start to finish. You could say that defensively too, they were, but I mean, it's defensively was pretty bad across. There's really, I can't really point to any positive. They couldn't even get off the field on third down, and now they're the worst team in the NFL on allowing third down conversions. So
I was gonna say too, it just felt like in this game, I don't know if you've kind of got this inkling. You just brought up that stat there of them having an issue with that throughout the season. That's not something that was really on my radar, but in this game specifically, it felt like every timely down or, every big third down, the 49ers were finding a way to convert it and just keep drives alive, which, I mean, that's going to be costly in this game. And I mean, I say that, and I guess it holds true because the 49ers were 8 for 11. I just looked it up, and 8 for 11 on third down and 1 for 1 on fourth down. So very efficient when it came to that. And, that kind of sums up. And though I don't have it in front of me, I'm sure those couple of conversions that didn't go probably came in the first quarter.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure 2 of those did. So, and the other thing was that the Eagles kept allowing the Niners to get into third and manageable, which I said going into this game was going to be huge. and in the first quarter they did a great job of keeping them out of those third and five, third and six, sort of third mid range sort of situations, and then it just fell apart for every single time. I mean, it felt like third and four almost, or shorter every single time that the Niners had third down to convert, and so it was just bad overall that they couldn't stop. I mean, any aspects of the offense after the first quarter.
Yeah.
But it's not, man. It's it was definitely really humbling, especially Debo Samuel scoring 3 touchdowns, having 130 receiving yards or some 110.
Yeah,
I
and he
can't
was one of the
remember.
big talkers going into this game.
Yeah, that one really pissed me off. I was like, if anyone else, like not him, 3 times especially on and like 2 long touchdowns to him, I was like, God damn it, seriously, like, oh man, that really bugged me. But I mean,
Let
Kittle
me
made,
ask you
yeah,
a question too. I'm curious if you were frustrated by the fact that like something we talked about was the Eagles have to get off to like the better start and be better in the first half. They've been that second half team. But we talked about the 49ers, they had the potential to bury the Eagles, and
yeah.
that's exactly what they did, which the Bills and the Chiefs didn't do in the last 2 games prior to this. But is it just frustrating you that yes, even though that came to fruition, the Eagles got buried by the 49ers, the fact that it's not like they did a bad job necessarily on offense in the first half. They were moving the ball. They were having good drives. They just didn't finish. I mean, how frustrating was that aspect?
Um, well, it was certainly frustrating not getting to score. I mean, there were a couple missed opportunities just throughout the game overall, but especially on the second drive, the second where they had to kick a field goal. I mean, Jalen Hurts had all the time in the world to throw the ball, and he was trying to scramble and lost his footing and took a sack instead on 2nd and 6, I think it was. So
Yeah.
that was, I mean, that was huge. Obviously, then it set up a 3rd and 20, and they had to settle for 3. But I mean, if just thinking about it, if it had been 14-14 going into the half, I'd feel a little bit better, even if the Niners were still going to get the ball out of the half. And um, it was I can't. It was just frustrating because they had been doing so well the last few weeks, scoring in the red zone, and just didn't do it against the Niners when it mattered. I mean, Charvarius Ward in the first drive had a really good defensive play against AJ Brown in the end zone. Great pass breakup on his part. So there's nothing really you can do on that one. The throw was just kind of 50-50 from Hurts. But, like I said, the Niners kind of made more plays, the better plays, the bigger plays when they mattered most. And I kind of just want to outline some of the plays that the Eagles missed, or like some missed
Yeah, sure.
opportunities. So there's obviously the one I just said, Charvarius Ward's play. I mean, the sack he took. Then on the next drive, on the drive that the Niners took the lead, Josh Sweat, that offsides on 3rd and goal, that was killer. I mean, that set him up at the 2-yard line, and I'm sure as hell that even if they hadn't scored on 3rd down with Ayuk, they would have gone for it on 4th and goal. I mean, that was killer because that was an incompletion, and that Josh Sweat sometimes just these penalties, these offsides specifically. I know he tries to time these snaps, but there are just times that he's caught out, and then he draws the flag, and it just costs them when it really matters. But that's not the only one. I mean, the false start on Jalen Hurts on the next drive. After the Niners scored, that I don't know what happened. I don't know if it was on Kelsey or if it was just on Jalen. They're not on the same page there with the snap, but
Yeah.
or the cadence. But then they were on 3rd and 6, and they had to punt it away after 3rd and 11. He scrambled, but Reed Blankenship missed an interception as well. I mean, granted, it was kind of a tough play, but he did have the ball in his hands, but just couldn't make the play when it mattered again. But and then that missed tackle. This one was kind of the dagger. The missed tackle from Nicholas Moreau on Debo Samuel that led to that really long touchdown. And say what you want about whatever holding call was missed, I don't really care. You got to make that tackle. That's the most important thing. And Moreau just didn't do it. So, and that put the Niners up 28-13. And at that point, I was like, all right, well, you got to score a touchdown, and which they didn't, and it just went downhill obviously from there. So there were plays that could have been made, and I feel like in the last few weeks, those were the plays that were going in favor of the Eagles. This week, I feel like it kind of went against them, but that's kind of like a law of averages sort of thing. And you just felt like at some point it was going to catch up, and it ultimately did in this game, especially. So,
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. Kind of on that topic, you just went through a bunch of the plays that were kind of big and the Eagles could have capitalized on. I'm curious if there's any players specifically, maybe more so on the defense, that you felt really kind of let the team down. I mean, we talked about Sean Desai getting out game, but was there anybody that stood out that you felt had a really bad game?
I mean, Morrow definitely got cooked on. I remember a few plays where he got Chris McCaffrey got by him, and there was like I forget what the route's called, but he was like out of the backfield, up and like over. It's like that route he got absolutely turned around. He's not good in coverage. That I always knew, and clearly the Niners did too. But Christian Ellis also. I mean, the linebackers is probably the biggest losers of the on defense yesterday, because they just. I mean, obviously they haven't played together at all like the entire season, because Zach Cunningham was there calling the plays as well. So losing your green dot and having a primarily special teamer step in there for him just didn't really end all that well. And Brock Purdy loves the middle of the field. That's something that the Eagles really struggle with. I mean, they've struggled with throughout the season, and yesterday was on full display with how exposed the linebackers got. So I would say those two primarily take the blame for that. But just
and I'm sure we'll talk a little more about this in stock up, stock down. But I guess the one last kind of overarching question I have for you from this game, we texted a little bit, and you were kind of like, man, I hope this is a little bit of a wake up call for this Eagles team. I mean, can you just kind of elaborate on that? What could possibly come of this? Because this is a team that the Eagles may have to face in the playoffs in a big time game again. I mean, it's like, what do the Eagles have to do to get to that point where they can match up with the 49ers, and kind of how can this be a wake up call?
I mean, the first thing, be more physical. And I know, like I said, that, having less rest than the Niners may have played a factor in that. But this is an offensive line, defensive line that's known for being, very physical, just altogether. So that's one thing that they certainly need. They need to have more of an edge. And I feel like there were times when Jalen Hurts had time in the pocket, and there was those two plays that he took sacks on, both of them actually. The one I mentioned before, and then the one on I think it was a second or third down, and he had all the time in the world. Instead of getting rid of the ball, he just took the sack. But I mean, it's just making. I didn't think offensively they were all that bad. I thought they were actually all right. It's just they couldn't.
They just didn't capitalize in the red zone a lot.
Yeah, they just couldn't punch it in when they had to. And like I said, some of those plays didn't go their way. But being more physical for sure is, and then figuring out defensively how to even slow this offense down, because they couldn't slow down anyone. After the first quarter, Debo went off, Kittle went off, McCaffrey went off. So it's. And I also said this: Chris McCaffrey is the biggest threat on that team, and that should have. I mean, it probably was the primary focus, but offensive line where the Niners played better than the Eagles' defensive line. So, it's really kind of just looking yourself in the mirror and like what we could have done better, and like how to better game plan for that. In offense, an explosive offense.
And I mean, it's like you've said in the past, it's like the way that they were winning games wasn't necessarily sustainable. So if this is a wake-up call for them to, go out against a division rival in the Cowboys this weekend and put up a better performance and just play their best football the rest of the season, because they kind of, have this realization, that could ultimately be a good thing for them. But yeah, no, you're right, man. I mean, Jalen Hurts, 298 yards and a touchdown, really didn't have a bad day. The receiving core kind of did their job. The offense, everything on the offense was kind of all right. They just didn't capitalize when they needed it most. And even though DeAndre Swift, didn't have a big game, I think only like 48 yards, it's like they had to pass their way back into the game near the end there. So it's not even like you can fully fault it there. So,
I'll say one more thing, just maybe getting the run game a bit more involved. And I mean, I know they were, I think, top in the league in rush defense, but still, like that. that's the other part of the offense, being physical at the point of attack. And that's something that the Eagles have been so good at for years. It just, I mean, obviously you couldn't run it when you were down by like 2 scores, or 3 scores, whatever it was. But like earlier on, maybe set the tempo a bit more and be like just nasty. And I don't know, just you just impose your will. I guess that's my point. But
So we can move on to the Steelers now, unless you have anything else you want to add on the Eagles.
no, I think I said everything I had to. Yeah.
All right, sounds good, man. Well, let's move on to the Steelers now. And I kind of talked about just this frustration and just general. It's like this was a game that we both were on here predicting last week. We were so confident. It was like, the Steelers just had to come in, take care of business. It wasn't even like they were on the road. They were at home.
Yeah.
They contained Kyler Murray, but just, it feels like they kind of beat themselves due to a lack of preparation. And I think part of that has to fall on Mike Tomlin. I mean, some of the big things that stand out for me is it's just like, the fact that when you have, 9 penalties for 77 yards in this game, when you're, unnecessarily wasting timeouts like they did at the start of the second half, when Chukwuma Okorafor ran onto the field late as the extra eligible tight end. When you talk about these different types of things, when you talk about the Cardinals driving 99 yards and not being able to, come up with a stop at all, it's like those are the things that are going to allow an inferior team to stay in the game. And that was exactly what it felt like happened here with the Cardinals. And, I don't know, man. It's weird because it's, I came in confident with this game and it almost didn't feel like a lack of preparation. And, the Steelers got the ball first to start the game and they had that big play action pass downfield to George Pickens. They were running the ball well. I thought, oh man, this offense is going to pick up right where it left off against the Bengals. Let's, really see if they can, put up a big number and get into the end zone like I was looking for. And just the fact of where I was after last week with how well this offense performed, and I really felt the Steelers were going to peak down the stretch here, to now fast forward one game later, and you talk about Kenny Pickett being hurt, and this team having their biggest letdown of the season, their worst loss of the year, and now all of a sudden you start to question, all right, well, out of these 5 games, what do the Steelers have to do just to fight for a playoff spot at this point? Yeah. And you wonder, in a crowded AFC where there's a lot of, it's not as top heavy as the NFC. There's a lot of teams that are, fighting for those couple of wild card spots. It's going to be tough for them to, it's not going to be easy for them to just, clinch a playoff spot here, especially now that Kenny Pickett is down and you're going to be rolling with Trubisky for at least an extended period of time.
Yeah, man. I mean, this was shocking across the board. I mean, say what you want about the rain delays, whatever. That really shouldn't have much of an impact on.
I thought that was almost going to benefit the Steelers, man. They go into halftime, and I think you go into halftime after the first, the first rain delay was in the first half, or actually, I think the delay was added on to halftime, and I was like, all right, like that's fine. That shouldn't be too much of a factor. They come out of halftime, and they still were kind of struggling. So that second rain delay comes, and I'm like, all right, screw it. Go back into the locker room and try and regroup again because they didn't look any better coming out of halftime. And so I really don't think that the weather was that big of a factor. It shouldn't have been that big of a factor for them. It certainly didn't affect the Cardinals.
Yeah, and I just, they started off well offensively. I mean, they had that 7-play, 65-yard drive, and then in the field goal, okay, this is promising. Like you said, building off last, and then the next 3 drives. I mean, they punted on all of them. It was 3 plays, 5 plays, 3 plays, and just out of sorts. And then the turning point really was when Kenny Pickett got injured. I mean, they had the really long drive, setting him up on, I think it was 3rd and goal at the 3-yard line. Kenny Pickett scrambles and then, gets injured, trying to, dive into the end zone. And then he couldn't even score on that with instead of they go in shotgun instead of under center to QB. I don't know.
I texted you right away how I hated that play call. I was like, even if it's Mitch Trubisky, you've got a yard to go. You need to just sneak it there. And that was really the turning point of the game. Not only because of the end of that drive, I guess that whole kind of sequence, the Kenny Pickett injury compounded by the fact that them not getting in there gave so much momentum to the Cardinals. And then the fact that you follow that up with the Cardinals driving it 99 yards, going into halftime with the touchdown lead. Because at the point when the Steelers got stood up at the goal line, it was still only 3-3. All the momentum shifted to the Cardinals. They didn't relinquish it. And then they came out after halftime with the ball. And I believe they put more points on the board in that drive. Actually, they punted on that drive after half, but still, the momentum was with them, and then they forced a fumble on the Steelers' following drive. So,
that was terrible. That snap from Mason Cole. Oh my God, like that was
yeah,
such a bad snap.
And I was going to talk about that more in stock up, stock down, but just from that whole sequence to end the second half really is what gave the Cardinals momentum, and I felt what that was at that point. Obviously the Steelers were still in it, but it felt like that was a real gut punch to the Steelers, where it was like, all right, they're wobbling right now. And then after the Cardinals scored that touchdown going into half, it hurt. It hurt a lot.
Yeah, and they couldn't come back from it. I mean, this team isn't necessarily built to do that. Come from behind like that,
especially not without Pickett.
Yeah, that too. So I mean, and you know what you have with Trubisky, he's really not. I mean, he's a backup QB. He's exactly what his description is.
Yeah.
So I mean, garbage time TD mean nothing.
And dude, here, short aside, maybe I should have saved this for the preview of the New England game. I don't even know how good I feel about Trubisky as a backup in this league, man. I mean, we've seen him. It's nothing special. I mean, Kenny Pickett really hasn't done much to make you feel this season like he's the franchise guy. And now we're going to an even lesser extent of that, Mitch Trubisky. I mean, it's like, the confidence I would have of him being able to come in and win football games is pretty considerably low. So I'll talk more about that when we get to the New England game. But yeah, not inspiring a lot of confidence. So I guess we could talk a little bit about the Kenny Pickett, injury that, resulted in this game. He's supposedly out 2 to 4 weeks. He had the surgery today successfully. I feel like the biggest, thing that hurts with this injury coming at this time, aside from obviously trying to win games and get into the playoffs, is just, you fired Matt Canada thinking that he was the issue with the offense. And then all of the evaluation the rest of the season was really going to be on Kenny Pickett. Well, now you may not be able to do that the rest of the year. So that's going to raise serious questions as to what the Steelers decide to do with the quarterback position this offseason.
Yeah, that is a huge loss for that reason alone. I mean, you're trying to figure out this guy's going to lead you for the next however many years. Like, you want to know if this is the guy who's going to lead you to success for the next decade or so. Or
it's not even that, Ricardo. I'm trying to figure out, is this the guy that, I want being the quarterback of this team in TJ Watt's prime and Minkah Fitzpatrick's prime and in the twilight of Cam Hayward's career? Or is it time to try to make, bring in, someone via trade or via free agency or maybe, Jalen Hurts was a second round pick. I'm not saying that, a mid first round pick, that's what Kenny Pickett was, but do you draft another quarterback? I mean, now all these questions are just going to compound on the fact that, we don't have any clue, along with the fact that, you'd like to know if this guy could be a franchise quarterback.
Right. I mean, that's totally valid, just like wasting the prime years of specific cornerstone players on the defense, especially. I mean, it's just tough, and it just further delays this evaluation process, because now you're not going to get you might get, if he comes back, you might get a game or two left. I don't know if that's even enough, but it's certainly troubling, and only going to bring further questions about what the immediate future maybe, and the future and years after. Difficult situation.
It's going to be something we're going to be talking about the rest of the season, depending on what this team does. Honestly, the next 3 games are super important because they're all still conceivably winnable. And I mean, it's that's still the goal. They still want to try and make the playoffs here, and at the very least they have to get to 9 wins, which is 2 more. They play New England this week, and then the Colts the following week, who are also fighting for a playoff spot. And then they'll have another game against the Bengals. So it's a tough spot, and that's going to be the conversation of another trending towards another potential mediocre season under Mike Tomlin of 8 wins, 9 wins, 10 wins, somewhere in that range. And just it's how do they take this next step to really be an AFC contender? one of that was firing Matt Canada, and the other is really figuring out, what the deal is with the quarterback position, and that's kind of up in the air now at this point. I'll talk about a couple more points just from this game. The Steelers actually still outgained the Cardinals,
Yep.
317 to 282, which it's like they win all these games that they struggle to move the ball, and then all of a sudden in this game they outgain their opponent and they lose. So
Yeah.
you know what? I guess that's just football, and that just cements the fact so much more that you never apologize for winning a football game in this league. It's like
Yeah.
I don't care if it's T.J. Watt and Alex Highsmith, forcing those touchdowns against the Browns early on. Like, you take the win any way you can get them, because this is a cruel game where when it goes the other way and you do something like outgain your opponent, you still lose.
Yeah.
And then really, I guess I'll just kind of touch on the defense a little bit. I felt like they got exposed to a certain extent. James Conner with a little bit of a revenge game, 25 carries for 105 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. Trey McBride also had a big game. And, ultimately the Cardinals, they were 3 for 3 in the red zone. So, the defensive identity of bend and don't break, the Cardinals kind of went against that and just were better. Ultimately, they were able to punch the ball into the red zone each time they got down there. And, that was really the difference. And the defense didn't force any turnovers. And, you know what? The Cardinals played a clean football game. And even though nobody necessarily lit up the stat sheet, I mean, James Conner did have a really good day. Kyler Murray didn't do anything, special. And they just played a clean, sound football game and beat the Pittsburgh Steelers, who it just seemed were unprepared and maybe mentally not all there.
Yeah, maybe they overlooked the Cardinals. I mean, honestly, we were so confident in this game. Like, seriously, this is one of the worst teams, if not the worst team in the NFL. I mean, roster's just absolutely atrocious. I couldn't even name you like half the starters on this team. Like, it's just bad. And also, this is just my personal, I guess, vendetta against Jonathan Gannon. Him beating you guys also pisses me off. It's just the fact that he got the last laugh.
It pisses me off too, man. I'm not happy over here.
No, I know, but it's like of course this guy would. I mean, this guy gets trashed so often, and the fact that he even beat you, I just you guys shouldn't have lost. It's just I don't know. It annoys me on so many different levels, and I mean, not even obviously following the Steelers more closely, you kind of associate more, and you're like, oh, like you kind of want them to win, but
yeah,
God, man, that was just bad.
It was as bad a loss as, definitely this season, and, probably even going back, probably until the Jets lost last season. This is probably the worst loss the Steelers have had. Week 4 of last year when the Steelers lost to the Jets.
Yeah.
I mean, this loss was absolutely brutal, and I guess this kind of transitions me into stock up, stock down a little bit. I was listening. I was doing some work in my basement at home before this game, and I had the radio on, and I was listening to the pregame show on the Pittsburgh sports radio station. I always forget what the number is out in Pittsburgh. And I don't know who the guys were on the pregame show, but after such a promising win last week against the Bengals, I was expecting some really upbeat conversation and really getting excited about this team. And they were just so down on it, down talking about Deontay Johnson and George Pickens drama. And then they started to allude to something that really kind of turned me off. They were talking about the fact that Mike Tomlin's always kind of had games throughout his career where he loses to an inferior opponent at home. He sometimes has that tendency. And while it's hard to, necessarily deny that throughout his, long tenure in Pittsburgh, the way that I was feeling positive about the Steelers, I shut it off. Before they even got deep into that conversation, I was like, I don't want these guys putting this out there into the ether. Why are we bringing down the positive vibes at all? This is not a conversation that we need to have right before a game against the Cardinals that we should win. And lo and behold, that's exactly what happens is we get one of those Mike Tomlin games at home where he loses to an inferior opponent. And I was on here looking like a fool. I was a fool, Ricardo, saying that he was in the Coach of the Year discussion a couple weeks ago. And and now, I mean, his stock's got to be down a little bit. I've been high on him throughout the season, but this is a loss you just cannot have when you are fighting for a playoff spot.
Nope, it's just absolutely not. I mean, yeah, that's as bad a loss as you can have, really. And I'm not really I'm not gonna go back and go through every single, that one loss that he had against a really bad team. Like It's just the fact that this happened after you like heard that. It was just like,
Yeah, dude.
ah,
It literally when we were down at halftime, that was the first thing I thought of. That was the first thing I thought of.
yeah,
Was what I heard on the radio, and I was like, these guys, I can't believe that they put this out there into the universe to even be something on my mind. It was cool
yeah,
that I heard that, and yeah, you know me, man. I'm a huge Mike Tomlin fan, but
yes,
I don't know who else can take much of the burden. I mean, he's got to be one of the ones
yeah,
shouldering the biggest burden of this, and he's spoke with the media today in his press conference. I haven't had a chance to watch it yet, but I'm going to be very curious what he kind of has to say before this short turnaround to go against the Patriots. So I'll keep kind of chugging along here. The other stock down, Mason Cole, big stock down in this game,
yeah,
man. I've talked before that I think he's probably the weakest link on this offensive line, either him or Dan Moore Jr. And I counted at least 2 botched snaps that were low and kind of corrupted a play. One of them being obviously that fumble that Mitch Trubisky couldn't just fall on and retain possession that led to another Cardinals touchdown. So he had a rough day. And then, also the Steelers linebackers, rough day, man. Landon Roberts gets hurt in the first
yeah.
half. Top 3 guys in this inside linebacker core are all, down with injury. We'll have to see on the short week if Roberts can go with, dealing with that groin. And he was looking really good too. So it stinks to lose him. And McCall Walker, he got exposed by Trey McBride in this game. Trey McBride went for 8 receptions, 89 yards, and a receiving touchdown on that big 99-yard drive.
Yeah.
Um, you know, 150 rushing yards for the Cardinals. Trey McBride was actually the only receiver that had more than 21 yards receiving. So the corners did their job, the secondary did their job. I think so much of the defensive struggles in this game has to fall on the linebackers, and it's hard for me to even fault the linebackers. It's really just a case of the injury bug really just biting that position hard and costing this team. So unfortunate, but those are my stock downs, man, and I don't even want to give a stock up after this game.
Yeah, I mean, the injuries mounted up for you guys too. I mean, you lost Landon Roberts for the game. You lost
Yep.
Pickett for the game. TJ Watt left with an ankle injury at some point and came back in.
Yeah.
Um,
Isaac
so
Sayamalu went down.
yeah, shoulder injury too.
Yeah.
So it's starting to add up a
And,
bit.
and it's tough. I mean, it's a double-edged sword because on the bright side, you can say, hey, Thursday night game, quick turnaround that, you can quickly get the taste of this bad loss out of your mouth if you can go out there and beat the Patriots. But at the same time, the short turnaround is always tough on players, and especially when the Steelers are as beat up as they are right now, that hurts. Another injury thing, too. Minkah Fitzpatrick supposedly played through a pretty significant hand injury, and he's going to keep it going against the Patriots playing through that. So props to him, man. He's such a leader and a dog on this team for playing through that. But dude, it's just tough because I went from as high and as good as I felt about the Steelers in a long time after that Bengals week to feeling as bad as I felt about them all season after this Cardinals game. So it's been just an emotional roller coaster really since that loss to the Browns. These past 3 games have been tough of just, down, up, down on this roller coaster. And hopefully, we'll talk about the Patriots game in a little bit, but hopefully it'll be back on the upswing soon. But let's talk about the Eagles and their stock up, stock down.
I'm kind of similar to you in the sense that it's just like I don't really know who to give a stock up to. I would say probably my only one, AJ Brown, only because he had 2 big plays. He had 8 receptions, 114 yards. That's really all I can say on that front. And I guess just stock down the Sean side of the defense. I mean, out muscled, out coached, out performed, out whatever you want to say about it. It was just bad. I mean, they were worn out from last week and the past couple weeks. Emotional wins, and the middle of the field got exposed. So I mean, and one thing to kind of keep your eye on is the Shaq Leonard situation, how that plays out, and because linebacker is, I mean, like I said, coming into the season is the biggest weak spot of the Eagles, and just getting thinner and thinner with these injuries, certainly not helping. So, the Eagles could use some reinforcements there in the middle of the field, but that's we'll see about that, and that's hopefully that comes out sooner rather than later because I'd rather just rip the Band-Aid off if he's going to Dallas. But
Well,
And then
hopefully he doesn't suit up this week, even if he is on limited. You know, if he goes to Dallas, at least hopefully it might be following this game, just so they don't have an additional reinforcement there.
yeah, and then my other one, just the run game non-existent.
Yeah,
There's just no other way to put it. It was just not effective when they ran it. And really the rushing total was kind of boosted by the fact that from Jalen Hurts to scrambles, that's really it. The run game itself, I think they only had 20 yards amongst the running backs. So
yeah.
just it's I find it so interesting that this because I feel like it's been an issue the entire season. It's just been an inconsistent run game. And it's like you have DeAndre Swift, who's a really good runner. There was those 2 weeks where the Eagles ran the ball really well, and then after that, it was just like, I know you're aggressive. I understand that that's
And
part of the
that's
game.
what every single person that can get in front of a camera like you and I, or get behind a microphone on the radio, was saying. Like, as much as it may not be as fun and as high flying as the Eagles last year, they're better when they run the ball first.
Yeah, that's such a huge part of their offense, and I don't really know why they're going away from it, or I don't know what the issue is offensively. I don't know. Play calling, I really don't know. I couldn't tell you.
And it
It's just
opens so much more up deep when they do run the ball first like that, man. I mean,
yeah.
you touched on it. Some of those games earlier in the season, it was like, all right, like this Eagles team, yeah, it may not be as pretty, but like, man, they can really get after it in the trenches, make some big holes, and then once you get DeAndre Swift out there in open space, man, he can do some damage himself as well.
Yeah, just I don't know. That's I'm gonna keep monitoring that until they figure that out. But those are I could literally put the entire team on here
Yeah.
for
Well,
stock depth. So
one other thing I'll say just on your stock down was as far as the linebacker group, Nicholas Moreau and Christian Ellis both first and third in Eagles total tackles in this game. So I mean, not anything that's surprising, because obviously the inside linebackers, that's what you expect them to lead the way. But man, Christian Ellis being one of the leaders in tackles on the team, that just shows you like things are getting thin for this defense, and they could really use that enforcement of Shaq Leonard.
yeah, well, that would be nice, but we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. And hopefully we get the news soon and that Band-Aid can kind of come off for you
I
one
know.
way or the
I'm
other.
just waiting to hear it that he signed with the Cowboys, but in any case, we move.
All right. Well, let's look ahead to week 14 a little bit. Do you want to open things up with the Eagles here?
I feel like we should do the because the Steelers play Thursday night, right?
All right. Yeah, I can do the Steelers first.
Yeah, maybe we should do that first.
All right. So let's break down the Steelers game a little bit. I mean, I guess the good thing, if there's, if you're ever going to have a bad game at home like they did against the Cardinals, I guess the best way you can rebound is playing a team that's actually trying to lose. So, I mean, it appears that's what the Patriots are trying to do to a certain extent. All joking aside, though, New England has been pretty putrid this season. They've only got 2 wins, both of them against teams in their own division. They haven't beaten anybody outside of the AFC East. So they're also last in the league in points per game, averaging just 12.3 a game. Not that the Steelers are much better. I think they're like 5th or 6th to last. But, Ricardo, this is what I'm kind of talking about a little bit, where it's like the goal for the Steelers to me has to be get to 9 to 10 wins and just try to get into the playoffs with Kenny Pickett back healthy and see what you can do in the playoffs. Give TJ Watt and this defense just a shot to cause some chaos for a team in the AFC. That's all I really want at this point. TJ Watt has never won a playoff game in his career. I want him to have a shot this season to potentially do that. And then you could, look to some stuff for the future on how this team can really improve offensively. But right now, that's kind of the goal. And I think beating the Patriots is one of the most important things for, getting to those 9 or 10 wins. They're home against New England this week. Then they're at Indianapolis and then home against Cincinnati before they have to travel to Seattle.
Yeah.
These next 3 games, you got to win 2 of them. Would you agree? I mean, I feel like at least 2 of these games they have to win. And I feel like this New England game is kind of the prime opportunity at home, bad Patriots team to get the job done potentially.
Yeah, I mean, it starts with the Patriots. Obviously, a one game at a time sort of mentality. That's something Mike Tomlin's been, really good at for his entire career. So Patriots, yeah, they really don't bring much offensively. They didn't score a single point last week against the Chargers, and the Chargers defense is terrible.
They didn't score a point last week, and I don't think they scored a touchdown the week prior. I don't know
Yeah,
how long of a touchdown drought they're on at this point, but yeah, it's been rough for them without a doubt.
yeah. Last 3 weeks, 6 points, 7 points, 0 points, and they lost all of those. And they've held teams to fewer than 10 points, which is fascinating. But that just shows how bad they are offensive. They can't put a drive together to save their lives. So, and adding the fact that Ramondre Stevenson might not even play,
Yeah.
and throwing Zeke in there, who's not exactly the dominant force he once was, but
And
um,
whether it's here, I guess I'll start with the defense a little bit.
yeah,
Whether it's Bailey Zappi or Mac Jones back there, Mac Jones we've seen is very turnover prone. Bailey Zappi is, very young and inexperienced. I really hope this defense, for as much as I want them to really limit the Patriots, moving the ball, I think also this is a game they could capitalize and force some turnovers and force the whichever quarterback it is into mistake. I don't know if Bill Belichick has said he's rolling with Zappi again or not. I mean, I looked on a depth chart today and it had Mac Jones down at third.
yeah.
So, I don't know if that's going to continue into this week because it's not like the offense was much better with Zappi in there. Either way, I'm really hoping they can force some turnovers. I guess the only thing that kind of worries me, I'm not even really worried about these running backs that much, man. I mean, I think it's going to be a lot of if the Patriots move the ball at all, I really am confident that the Steelers can get back to that bend but don't break mindset. If anything on offense scares me, it's Landon Roberts being out again and the Steelers rolling at linebacker with McCall Walker and Mark Robinson and
Yeah.
Hunter Henry and Mike Gesicki potentially having their best games of the season, just kind of dominating the way that Trey McBride did. Again, they still need Zappi to throw it to them and get the ball into their hands, but
Yeah.
we've seen that the linebackers the Steelers currently have on the roster could get exposed.
That's a valid point. Very valid. Yeah, it's going to be at least on that front. Those are certainly two weapons, and probably the most. I don't want to say consistent, but like they're players that you could probably use against the Steelers. Use them
They're
toward
they're the
their
two
advantage.
that worry me the most, and
Yeah,
I guess
that
if
makes sense.
Ramondre Stevenson is healthy, that could cause some problems. But really, it's the tight ends I'm worried about the most. But still, I think this game is going to be a slog. I think it's going to be incredibly
Yeah,
low scoring. And I'll move to the offense a little bit with Mitch Trubisky there. You
yeah,
know, he's got to captain this offense, and it's hard for me to fathom them really putting up points. I mean, the fact that they barely scored with Kenny Pickett at all, always struggled to get into the end zone. Now to
yeah,
expect more from Mitch Trubisky in this offense, I find that hard to believe. I think they really just kind of have to lean on their bread and butter of, just trying to establish the run and hoping they can open up some play action stuff to move the ball downfield. Other than that, I mean, maybe some screens or something to just get the ball into George Pickens, Deontay Johnson's hands. But I really think this team's offense is going to go as the running game goes in this game.
yeah. But that's going to be a tough test because the Patriots are fourth in rush defense, so
Yeah.
and they're first in yards per carry, so allowed. So, yeah, it's going to be a slog for sure. I mean, I don't know if they can't run the ball. I really don't know how they're going to move it.
I don't know
Um,
either, man. I don't know either.
so I yeah,
And
I
that's
don't.
why I'm saying there's going to be a lot of pressure on this defense to really force turnovers and just give the Steelers some short field or I hate to even have to say that we need like a defensive touchdown out of them, but like man, this is going to be a slow slog. I'll give you a little story. One of my coworkers at the restaurant I work at as a waiter, he is also big into sports gambling like I am a little bit. 2 weeks ago when the Patriots were playing the Giants, he had a bet that was like incredibly good odds of no touchdowns being scored in that game. Obviously, Tommy DeVito, I think he threw a touchdown or
Yeah,
two in that game. It didn't hit. The following week, Patriots against the Chargers. Patriots score no points. Chargers score just 2 field goals. So it would have hit this past week had he bet on it this past week when the Chargers were playing the Patriots. But dude, it wouldn't shock me if you get something. I'd be surprised if there's more than one touchdown in this game. I'd be a little bit surprised. It wouldn't shock me if we see it. Like the over under in this game is set at an astronomically low 30.5. But
yeah,
to get to 30.5, man, that would mean that you're talking about each team scoring around like 14 points. That's not going to happen. I don't
no,
see any way that happens, dude.
no. That that under's way too high, first off, or
Isn't
the
that
one
crazy
too high.
though? We're talking about an NFL game where an
That's
over under 30 and a half is too high. That's nuts.
it shouldn't. Yeah, that shouldn't be a thing. I mean, that's just bad. That's terrible. Yeah. Neither team's going to score more than 13. That's how I see it. I mean, I'd be shocked if you can get double figures at this point.
I mean,
Like,
we're going back to the
seriously.
Stone Ages of football. The fact that Al Michaels has to call this game on Thursday Night Football too, he's got to be. Hey, dude. I mean, today's Monday. He might be starting to get a little tickle in his throat. I mean, a little bit of coughing, a little bit of a fever, some COVID related symptoms, man.
Common sick, man.
I don't even know if Amazon has a second play-by-play guy behind him, but
I don't know either.
man, I mean, this is a game he may be trying to get out of. This game may be worse than when we had the Panthers against the Bears a couple weeks ago.
Oh my god, that's really sad.
So this game, I mean, the only thing that I have is Steelers. You just find a way to win. This is a game you have to win. Find a way to win. I don't know what they can really exploit on the Patriots defense, but the Steelers defense, I think, kind of has to lead the way here, and just don't turn the ball over. I mean, it could be as simple as whichever team turns the ball over more is going to lose. So, that's kind of, all I have on this game. And either way, just find a way to win, man. Find a way to win.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. It's a big game, even though it's probably going to be an absolutely terrible one, but you got to win it. So
got to win it. All right, let's talk about the Eagles now. Huge game against the Dallas Cowboys coming up in division, and really has implications not only for the division but for home field advantage in the playoffs, for the bye in the playoffs. If these teams have to meet for a third time in the playoffs, it could have implications on home field advantage in that aspect. So much is going into this game, and the Eagles also have to try and bounce back from that bad loss against the 49ers, man. So where do you want to start with this one?
Oh God, I don't know. I don't have a great feeling about this game either, but you know what? Division game, anything can happen really. And I'm just gonna say this, the Eagles haven't won in Dallas in 5 tries in the last 5 years, so that's not exactly a good record to have going into this game. And but whatever, if you're trying to end this streak, you got to limit CeeDee Lamb. I mean, you remember the first game, he had 11 receptions for 191 yards. You can't expect to get away with that again and win the game.
Yeah.
Like, he is by far their top playmaker on offense. There's just really no other way to put it. He's just electric. Like, you got to bracket him. I don't know. I mean, the good thing I will say, we have Bradley Roby back, and he wasn't playing in that first game. And in that game, it was Sidney Brown, the rookie, and Eli Ricks, undrafted free agent, covering him. That went so poorly. So at least now you have a somewhat competent starter starting in the slot, which is where CeeDee Lamb lines up. Maybe you can limit him, but I would throw in another linebacker in there to, just like limit the damage that he can do. And it's just, I mean, you saw what he did against Seattle too. He also had a big game, over 100 yards. And I mean, I'm not going to say the offense revolves around him, but a lot of the plays are designed for him, and because he's just that good. So that's the key to stopping the offense. Because I mean, Michael Gallup, I don't know, he hasn't really done much this season. Brandon Cooks kind of coming alive a little bit the last few weeks. Had a big game against Seattle too, but I mean,
they're all respectable players. Even Tony Pollard running the ball on the ground, but the Cowboys defense, slowing them down starts and ends with being able to contain CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah, and I'm also going to say this, just like I said last week, you can't afford to be in third. You can't give the Cowboys offense third and short. Like, you're not going to stop them, because clearly that's been the issue all season for the Eagles. Even in 3rd and 7, they can't stop. It seems like they can't stop offenses. It's just not a given anymore, which is really disappointing, really frustrating, especially, when you have to make the stops, they don't make them. So if you can keep them in 3rd and long, whether that's stopping the run early or, stopping the Cowboys short passes and making the tackles right away. I don't know. Like, you just can't keep giving offenses these 3rd and short up, because they're going to convert every time. And, with the NFL now, it's like, if you have a 4th and 1, even on your own 30, then you're probably going to go for it. Like, it's You don't want this offense to get hot and start clicking, sort of like the Niners did. So you really got to make the plays when they matter most. You got to make the stops on third down because otherwise, in for another long day, probably another beat down, which I would definitely be pissed about because Sean because I like Sean Desai. I've been saying like he's creative with the way he calls plays, but yeah, maybe he's got to just figure one specific, or I don't know, a specific personnel that he likes or that he uses best, or whatever the most effective thing is, and to try and limit this offense because last few weeks it's been tough sledding, getting any sort of stop. Um, so that's my take on the defensive side, or at least.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's they did. I want to say it's like because the it's not like a ton of points were scored in the last game that I want to say it's like, hey, can you find a way to kind of limit it to that number again? But I mean, I don't know. I feel like there's going to be more scoring in this game one way or another, but yet still I think the big onus, especially for just the way that the defense kind of got out coached against the 49ers, you got to find a way to find an advantage over CD Lamb and this Cowboys offense. So
Yeah.
I'm with you on that. That's going to be huge. And, after the Cowboys, they scored 38 points or something like that against Seattle. I mean, they've been playing some really good football these last couple of weeks. So, this is going to be a big test for them. And then obviously a test for the Eagles defense to try and bounce back.
Yeah. And then offensively, I mean, do what you did early in the Niners game and have long drives, but score touchdowns on them. You
Yeah.
have to convert those. That's huge. I mean, you saw the Cowboys defense get exposed a little bit by Seattle, which I mean, let me be totally rude with you. I didn't think the Seahawks had any shot of putting up more than like 20 points in this game and turned to a shootout, which was entertaining. But so
Hey, I
maybe
mean,
there's
let
something
me
there.
ask you this. Do you think it's possible that we could see, I don't know if Seattle or if Dallas is going to try to make some adjustments following that Seattle game, but could we see AJ Brown potentially have a type of game that DK Metcalf had? I mean, he kind of exposed Deron Bland a little bit. Everybody was talking about Deron Bland really in the defensive player of the year conversation, not after that, poor outing against DK Metcalf.
Yeah.
Could it be, something like that? I mean, I feel like these Cowboys corners can be exposed a little bit. They're not quite as good as maybe everybody's made them out to be.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, Devontae Smith, the first game, had that long touchdown against Deron Bland in the corner of the end zone. So, he's not, for all the interceptions he makes, he does get burned from time to time. So, the more pressure you put on him, perhaps, especially with AJ Brown, I mean, he's got the speed, the strength, like pretty much all the physical tools you would want. He's not quite DK Metcalf strength wise or like build wise, but he's still pretty damn strong and not probably not as fast either, but still it would probably help the offense to get him the ball just like you did against the Niners with quick slants or screens or something like that to just get the offense into a rhythm too. And um, man, I just think you got to run the ball more too. That's also why I say you got to have these long drives because I mean it's one thing to throw the ball all over the numbers and stuff like that, but you really want to like deliver like you really want to punish this Dallas defense. You want to wear them out like sort of how teams have been doing to the Eagles in the run game the last couple weeks, the Bills, the uh the Niners yesterday. They kind of punished the defensive line. I want to see the Eagles offensive line do that. Like why don't they go back to running the ball? I mean, go under center, give Boston Scott a few snaps under center. I don't know, and hand him the ball off.
Yeah.
I just think it has to be more of a factor because the Eagles are more dangerous when they run the ball, as we said before. You can set up the play action. You'll have defend the linebackers, you'll have the edge rushers kind of a bit more honest, a bit more aware of play action and stuff like that. And you have to make them more disciplined. So I mean, you got to figure out a way to move the ball and effectively and score a touchdown, right? And it's not like the Cowboys are great in the red zone defense. They've allowed, I think, convert touchdowns on 60% of their the opponents' red zone trips. So they're not exactly great when you get in there. But Jalen Hurts can't be holding the ball for ages again like he did against the Niners and take sacks expecting to somehow make a play. But I don't know. I mean, just make the plays, man. Make the plays, have long drives, and the other thing is, keeping the offense off the field too. Maybe quieting the crowd a bit, but I
Yeah,
don't know,
man.
man. It's a lot to
This
ask.
game this game has huge implications. I mean, I'd be remiss after the 49ers game if we didn't mention too that Dallas does have those extra couple of days to prepare, having played on Thursday night football. So they've got some extra time going into this game, whereas the Eagles, are just going to be on normal rest. And yeah, this game is Sunday night football. So
Yeah,
I've been getting off work early on Sundays, so hopefully I'll be able to watch this whole thing from the comfort of my house. But yeah, man, this game is huge for both of these teams and has major impacts on the NFC playoff picture. So that being said, let's get into predictions for the game a little bit.
yeah,
Let's just keep it rolling with this Philly Dallas game. Philadelphia, according to FanDuel, comes into this game plus 3.5 at Dallas. What do you make of that? I think the line is kind of what you'd expect,
yeah,
given this is in Dallas. You talked about the stats about the lack of success the Eagles have had there, and obviously both of these teams coming off of different results in their last game. What do you kind of have here? Last week for the Eagles against the 49ers, I had the Eagles winning and covering the spread, which was obviously wrong. You had, like you said earlier, 24-20, you predicted the 49ers to win. So they did win and they covered the spread.
yeah. I don't know how confident I feel in this game. If you were to ask me this later in the week, I might say something differently, but I'm going to say the Cowboys win 28-24. Just because I think they're playing better football, and it's in Dallas, so the Cowboys cover the spread. But
Yeah.
you never know. I mean, the Shaq Leonard thing might influence my feelings about the Eagles defense. I don't know. We'll see. But or even Zach Ertz for that matter.
Yeah, man.
But
Man, this is tough. This is setting up to be a good game. I want to pick the Eagles. I think that they can win this game. I really think that one of the biggest things outside of obviously, the stuff we talked about, like limiting CD Lamb and being efficient and punching the ball into the red zone when you're on offense and having those long drives, establishing the run. Outside of all of that, I think one of just the biggest things is going to be, how much does this team rally around the idea of just bouncing back and, really, a big statement would be beating their rival in the Cowboys, one of the other, really top teams in the NFL, after such a bad loss to the 49ers. Does that kind of internal conviction kind of come out and have them playing with some fire and, getting back on a normal, week-long schedule to prepare and everything like that.
yeah,
For the sake of differentiation, man, and I like the Eagles in this game. I think this game is going to be really close. I'm going to go 28-27 Dallas. So I'm going to have Philadelphia covering, but I'm going to have Dallas winning.
yeah.
So I'm going to just write that in here real quick. But yeah, man, I think this is going to be an incredibly close game either way, kind of coming down to the wire there. The last game came down to the wire. So I see it kind of being similar in that vein. I mean, both of these teams see each other so often. They know what they're trying to do. I see it continuing to be close. The other game, I'm kind of shocked at this line. Pittsburgh -6 at home against New England.
I know that's
so big for two putrid teams, or a putrid Patriots team and a Steelers team that the only way they can move the ball is running the ball, and they're going up against one of the best run defenses with a backup quarterback. I can't believe they think it could possibly be that big. So, I was kind of thinking going into this, I would stay away from both of these teams betting this week, but I may bet the Patriots to cover the spread, even though I'm going to root for the Steelers to win. But, dude, I don't know if I really see a touchdown being scored. Nope. I mean, I think it's going to happen. I'm going to say it's going to happen. I'm going to go, dude, can I say 10-3, man? I mean, like,
yeah, you're allowed to.
Is that kind of crazy?
No.
I'm going to go 13. I'm going to go, I'm sorry. I don't know if I'm supposed to say that on here, but I'm struggling with this game, man. I'm struggling with it.
So am I.
I'm gonna say something. I'm gonna say something random here. Let's do Let's do 12. Let's do 12 to. Let's do, dude. That's too high. I tell myself all these things. It's too high.
Dude, I had 13-6, but I'm changing it.
What are you saying? Do you know what you're going here with the score?
I'm going with the same logic as you. I'm going to say no touchdown. I'm going to say 9-6. That's how bad I think this game is.
That is so crazy. I can't do that. I'm going to go 12. I can't do 12-6 because that would be a push, and I really think the Pats are going to cover this spread. So I'm going to go 12-8, and let's just say something crazy is going to happen. 12-8. The Pats cover the spread, but the Steelers find a way to win. Maybe there's a touchdown in there for the Steelers, and they, miss a field goal. I don't know how it's going to happen. The Steelers are going to win. There's going to be one touchdown scored between the two teams, and my best bet of this whole game is the under. Don't bet the spread. Yes. I don't know what I was saying betting the Pats spread. Just hammer the under. So
yes, easy.
That's what I'm rolling here. So both of us have the Pats covering the spread, but the Steelers winning. And we both have the Cowboys winning, but you have the Cowboys covering, and I have the Eagles covering. I wonder, it'd just be great if we came back next week and had both of these teams just win handily, and we could just be real positive following this episode. But whatever, we were bound to have an episode like this where both of our teams lose, and we were going through it with the different range of emotions. But man, I think we've come to the end of this episode. It's been a good one for sure, and it's been healthy for me to hash it out with you. I will say that. So,
same for me, man.
Any final thoughts you want to touch on here as we wrap things up?
I just hope our teams win somehow. That's all I ask.
I just hope so too, man. Let's get something going good on Thursday, and you know what they say, you waiting all day for Sunday night, and hopefully we'll be waiting all Thursday after the Steelers win, Friday, Saturday, and then Sunday for Sunday night and a potential Eagles win. So let's be hopeful. Let's be optimistic. Both of us are upbeat sports fans. And until next time, everybody, peace out. Bye-bye.